Morty comic issue 24. We start out with Summer in the UFO with Rick and Morty, telling them that she doesn't want to be a doctor because she doesn't want to work really hard, and just wants to be a barista or something. And Rick asks if she was talking. You'd think Rick would be able to relate to laziness, but I guess he was just bored by how mundane her talk was. So Rick makes a pun that in space, no one can hear you dream, and she says she hates them because Morty didn't stand up for her. Then they scream because they almost drove into a spaceship that came out of nowhere, and Rick says that he made that spaceship, and it disappeared 35 years ago when they first tried to use it. I remember this story. I remember the ending. He says that he built the engine using a precursor tech to his portal gun. So someone probably hit the wrong button and trapped the ship in a pocket dimension. And somehow the return protocol just now kicked in. Why not a lot earlier, like right away? Summer just immediately assumes the spaceship of Rick's had a crew. Well, I guess because the crew had to be in there to press the wrong button, but he could make robot crews. It's not like Rick to think he needs a whole crew that's not his family. He's not social. And she's told that those people couldn't still be alive. Rick then wants to go in there because there's something very valuable on that ship. He's asked why he names the spaceship that weird name, and he says that it was in 1981, and everyone is crazy about cats. Summer says that she loves kittens and teacups. But out of nowhere, Morty of all people knows that Rick's talking about Cats the musical. And he teases big, tough Rick for liking a musical. But if he thought that contradicted his personality, he shouldn't have assumed it was the musical. But it would have been just as confusing for him to name the spaceship after a real cat. Rick has a comeback that made me chuckle when Summer says she has a bad feeling about this. And what added to the humor was that Morty sucked up to him saying good one, and he just told him to shut up, not appreciating it. Summer gets scared because of a creaking sound, and Morty says that he's been on a bunch of adventures and nothing really bad has ever happened in them. He references that they ruined a whole planet once by accident and were fine, so why be scared? He's being genre savvy. And what he said confirms that he's supposed to be the C-137 Morty from the show. Summer says the ship must be haunted. And Rick doubts her after everything he's seen in his own adventures. And he insults the anti-vaxxer movement because Jerry's an idiot. So of course Jerry would believe in it. Then he says that the valuable thing he came for was copper wire. And old ships are made of stuff. And this ship is a gold mine. Even though he could warp to a mansion or bank vault and get all the money he wants. Summer thinks he'll upset the ghosts by messing with their stuff, even though they're not using it. Rick has a good point that if the ship is haunted because people died here and is old, then the Gettysburg would be extremely haunted, instead of a vacation getaway. That's a good point. But that just makes the fact that there are ghosts in the story feel arbitrary. What determines when they show up then? Rick still doesn't believe they're ghosts when there's no other explanation. And I'm pretty sure he saw a ghost in the comic before this. Like, in the Scrooge ripoff story, he saw a ghost. And Morty cheerfully wonders if they will end up being some sort of drug Rick gets high on or something, being genre savvy. They run away, and Summer sees a red threatening message on the wall. Rick just says he gets worse on his wall at home. The walls start bleeding, and Morty says that's probably a spaceship lubricant, remaining cheerful. I love his contrasting with Summer like this. Maybe it'd be annoying if he was always this cheerful, but maybe not because it just makes the moment where he finally starts freaking out actually cathartic. Rick says that the power is goofed, and tells one of his family members to run over and see if a plug in the next room got knocked loose somehow. I guess by the ghosts? How are there ghosts? What determines who gets to become one? Why don't ghosts take down every evil dictator in the world? Or go mess with criminals with their powers? Are they lame enough that they're trapped in one small place? Which kind of defeats the whole purpose of them getting to stay on Earth and do nothing that matters? And what would also defeat the whole purpose is if they can't physically interact with objects, so they can see stuff but can't do anything. They might as well be allowed to stay in the afterlife then and just be able to spy on stuff through cameras. No story with ghosts ever answers these questions. The door slams shut on Rick and gets him in the dark by itself. Morty puts faith in Rick that ghosts aren't real and puts the plugs together. And then Rick gets scared by a whole bunch of different people surrounding him trying to guilt him. We see Bird Person here, which is really confusing since we see him get brought back to life as a cyborg in the show. So he's not really dead. In fact, he was brought back as one in the same episode where Rick thought he died. So how could the comic writer be unaware of this? He has to be a Bird Person from another universe then. Maybe he was his original one. I guess he died because of him, and that's why he's blaming him. We also see that assassin from the show that's all, "Oh boy, I love killing." That's literally what he talks like, and it's hilarious. But Morty killed Michael, not Rick. Did he just assume Rick did because he usually pilots a spaceship? But that would have happened so suddenly that he wouldn't have gotten the chance to know what killed him before it happened, right? He wouldn't know a spaceship hit him then. If he could find out what killed him after death, he would have also found out it was Morty who did it. So he must be a different version of him from another universe. Most of these are people I don't recognize, but the only one that I know for sure should be guilting Rick is the guy with the glasses here. Because he was sent into the body of a homeless man full of illnesses to build a theme park there, and he ended up getting killed because he died and things went wrong. The door actually opens on its own to conveniently let him come out. Well, those aren't scary ghosts. Literally all they did was rush at them and try to guilt him. He admits to his grandchildren that he was wrong and the ship's probably going to possess one of them. And for no reason he thinks that if they stick together and keep their wits, they're guaranteed to get out of here, because he's in denial. Why would he say the ship would try to possess one of them and not just ghosts? Why did he take the risk of giving a weapon to any of them if he just said that they might get possessed? He says that he thinks the one who gets possessed will be the one with the least willpower, and he's seen what Summer brings back from them all. But he hasn't seen any actual proof that ghosts can't just possess anybody and everybody. Why only one person? He only believes that because he needs to believe it. And because, I guess he got it from pop culture. Morty says he doesn't need a weapon anyways because he'll be fine like always. And Rick takes his axe from him, just to keep foolishly holding it himself when he should know that he could either get possessed and be made to hurt them or hurt them in the process of trying to attack ghosts that haven't explained why they're even intangible. Morty wonders if this ship going to hell means that hell is just a parallel dimension and not an inexplicably higher plane of existence. And while he makes a lot of sense, Rick tries to stop him from thinking too hard. Why? Morty wonders if that means heaven is real too, and Rick says there's a dimension where everything is shaped like feet too, and nobody worships feet. Summer and Rick grab some axes, and it's amusing how Rick talks trying to be brave and keep them calm. He says the ghosts aren't very scary stuff and they'll be fine, and Summer puts her hands over her eyes talking about kittens and teacups as they try to ignore skeletons walking after them. And Rick reasons that we all have skeletons in our bodies, so it's like being scared of belly buttons. Then he gets possessed because the ghosts go up his nose. So what took so long? Why didn't those idiots do that the first time they showed up? And do that to all of them? That is baffling. Rick asks what was that as he's surrounded by nothing but red, and he starts killing some clowns out of nowhere. And one of them grabs his axe and tells him to stop. Then it turns out the ghosts were just making him see things, and he actually hurt Morty, causing them to rush him to the hospital, where he takes a long time to get better, and eventually ends up coming home on crutches 96 days later. It's great that we see his family be concerned about him the entire time. Wait, I have a question. Why didn't Rick just use his portal gun to immediately get out of the haunted spaceship? It's not like him to not have his portal gun with him all the time. They could have easily avoided this entire plot if Rick hadn't been an idiot. And it sure was nice of the ghosts to let Rick leave in his spaceship right away to get Morty to safety. All they did was make Rick hurt Morty, and then he miraculously snapped out of his hallucinating for no reason at all when he could have hurt Summer too and done a lot worse. Morty says that he told Rick nothing bad ever happens to him, even though he was proven. And then he trips and has to go to the hospital again and is stuck in a wheelchair the whole time. Of course, this isn't cathartic because it went too over the top for no reason. Although I'm forcing myself not to smile because, well, maybe it did cross the line twice. It's just ridiculous that this happened to him again. I was just talking about the adventure making him freak out like a normal, relatable person. That's what was cathartic. Because it was realistic. Then, for no reason, we see a skeleton watching a TV surrounded by ghosts back in the spaceship. And it took a while for me to figure out that the weird text bubble wasn't Rick, but was from the television itself, because Rick and Morty are in the later panels. The spaceship explodes as Rick celebrates in his spaceship, being outside of it for some reason. And Morty just wants to go home, being scared for some reason. Probably because he's seeing the spaceship that he got hurt in. And he fortunately feels sorry for him and calls him pal. So, what was that ending supposed to mean? It's not like Summer's with them. So, sadly, that doesn't mean that the whole thing with Morty getting hurt never happened and it was all just part of Rick's hallucination. So, why did the spaceship explode? And why'd Rick come there? I guess Rick destroyed the spaceship. But then why didn't he destroy it the instant he left? After getting Morty to the hospital? The fact that it's not in motion and it's instead a comic book doesn't do a good enough job of showing what happened here. This was a confusing story, even if it was great at doing tension well. It was interesting to see Rick's reaction to Ghost, but it was confusing that they spent most of the story being so mercifully ineffective, instead of just possessing him right away. And not possessing everyone, instead of just him. And before that, all they did was scare him and then guilt him. They could have done a lot worse, even if the story ended up being cruel to Morty at the end. Which was supposed to be realistically dark, way more realistic than most ghost stories, where the protagonists are always fine, but the ghosts were so merciful until the end, though. It was supposed to show you a story where, for once, something terrible does happen to Morty, but he's still at a point that he ends up being fine in the end of his adventures because he ends up completely healing, and he's perfectly uninjured by the end. I guess the point the writer was trying to make was that the adventures are so stressful for the characters involved. And the threat of them potentially having an injury is still an important one that should be cared about, even if they won't be killed off. They would still be in pain from that injury, and they could still be debilitated by an injury. Speaking of the ending made no sense whatsoever at first. It's not like we see Rick shooting missiles at the spaceship. Maybe, oh, I guess he did. Maybe the red triangles that pointed to the wall of the spaceship and startled the skeleton were actually the tips of missiles. And so that blew the spaceship up. It's a comic book, not a show, which makes it harder to tell what happened. It sure was nice of Rick to wait until Morty was healed enough to be in the spaceship to witness its destruction before it destroyed the spaceship. He could have gone to the spaceship as soon as Morty came home from the hospital the first time, and destroyed it while having a camera so that Morty would be able to witness it. Wouldn't he be furious enough to want to do this right away? There's also the confusing problem that most of the ghosts that reveal themselves to Rick are people we don't even know about, and a few of them have to be alternate universe versions of themselves based on the history in the show. But that's just a nitpick. After all, there are tons of parallel universes in the continuity, so it's not like you know it has to be a fanon thing. A real problem with the writing was that Rick had no excuse to not have his portal gun so he could just immediately get out of the spaceship with his family.